The audience erupted with cheers as Kelly Clarkson welcomed Keith Urban to her stage, the two stars embracing warmly as longtime friends and collaborators. The mood was electric at first, filled with laughter and nostalgia as they reminisced about shared performances and their parallel journeys through the music industry. Kelly praised Keith's global success and unique ability to bridge country with pop and rock influences, earning applause from the crowd. But as the conversation turned toward the ongoing debate about authenticity in country music, Keith's demeanor shifted. His smile softened, his eyes narrowing as he leaned forward, preparing to defend his perspective with the quiet intensity that had defined his career. Kelly, always eager to spark meaningful dialogue, raised the question of whether blending genres risked diluting country's essence. She framed it as a light-hearted inquiry, but Keith took it seriously, his voice firm as he explained that experimentation was vital to keeping music alive. Kelly countered that while she admired bold risks, she also understood critics who felt modern country was losing its soul. The audience clapped, some nodding in agreement with Kelly's point, but Keith's jaw tightened, his hands clasping together as though bracing for an argument. The easy camaraderie they shared moments earlier began to fade, replaced by a tense undertone that rippled across the stage. Keith leaned back in his chair, visibly frustrated, and accused parts of the industry and by implication, some of Kelly's comments of romanticizing the past to the point of stifling progress. Kelly, her smile now edged with firmness, replied that honoring the past wasn't about stifling anything but about respecting the legacy built by legends. The audience reacted with gasps and scattered applause, the atmosphere growing thick with anticipation. Keith's eyes flashed as he shot back that critics often forgot he had spent his career pushing boundaries while still honoring the tradition, and that he didn't need to be lectured about respect on live television. Kelly's composure slipped slightly as she leaned forward, her voice carrying a sharpness rarely seen on her show. She reminded Keith that she had always admired his work, but admiration didn't mean silence in the face of controversy. She insisted that every artist had a responsibility to acknowledge when fans felt disconnected from the roots of the genre. Keith's lips tightened into a thin line before he delivered the remark that would ignite the confrontation fully. Maybe the problem isn't the music, Kelly. Maybe the problem is that some people don't understand it anymore. The audience gasped audibly, their eyes darting between the two stars as the tension broke into full flame. 5 Kelly, stunned but unwilling to back down, fired back with measured fury. She declared that dismissing people's concerns was arrogant, and that the strength of country music had always been its ability to connect across divides. The applause thundered in her favor, but Keith's face flushed as he rose abruptly from his seat. He shook his head, muttering that he wouldn't sit through what he considered a twisted version of respect. Without another word, Keith turned and stormed off stage, the audience exploding into shocked whispers and applause. Kelly sat frozen, her hands gripping her chair, before she finally exhaled and looked directly into the cameras, her eyes blazing with disappointment. She addressed the audience with raw honesty, admitting that she never expected such a moment to happen with someone she admired and cared for. Her voice trembled, but her words carried strength. If country music can't have these conversations, then maybe we're already losing what makes it real. The crowd erupted in cheers, many standing in support of her vulnerability. Behind the cameras, producers scrambled, some urging to cut to commercial, others gesturing wildly for Kelly to continue. The show pressed on, but the energy had changed irreversibly. Meanwhile, backstage chaos consumed the studio. Keith's team rushed to gather him as he paced furiously, shaking his head and muttering under his breath about being disrespected. Paparazzi had already gathered outside, tipped off by whispers from the production crew, eager to capture the fallout. Keith was ushered quickly into a waiting car, his face hidden beneath the hat, but the photos still spread within minutes. Social media ignited instantly with hashtags #Keith vs Kelly and #CountryClash trending globally. Fans were split down the middle. Some praised Keith for standing up for himself, while others applauded Kelly's calm but firm handling of the confrontation. By evening, entertainment headlines dominated feeds. Keith Urban explodes on Kelly Clarkson Live, country confrontation stuns daytime TV, and Kelly Clarkson left in shock after walkout. Analysts on music networks began dissecting the clash, debating whether Kelly had pressed too hard or if Keith had overreacted. Nashville insiders whispered that the fallout might fracture friendships in the tight-knit country community, while others speculated it was only the beginning of an industry-wide debate about country's identity. The next morning, Kelly broke her silence with a heartfelt message during her opening monologue. She told her audience she had nothing but love for Keith but emphasized she would never apologize for defending her beliefs about music's growth. Her words, honest and steady, resonated with fans who flooded her social media with support. Hours later, Keith released his own statement, doubling down on his stance that country music needed less talk and more respect for artists doing the work. His words, fiery yet polished, reignited the online war between their supporters. What began as a friendly interview had evolved into a cultural flashpoint. Kelly and Keith's heated clash was no longer just about two artists disagreeing. It had become a symbol of the larger struggle within country music, a tug-of-war between tradition and transformation. Fans, celebrities, and industry insiders continued to take sides, ensuring that the story dominated headlines for weeks. And while both stars carried on with their careers, the memory of that explosive moment on Kelly's stage lingered, a reminder that even in the polished world of television, raw emotion can break through and change everything in an instant. The morning after the stormy episode, Kelly Clarkson arrived at her studio knowing the cameras would be waiting. Paparazzi lined the sidewalks, shouting questions about Keith Urban's walkout. Kelly, wrapped in a long coat and oversized sunglasses, kept her silence as she slipped inside, but her tight-lipped smile hinted at the weight she carried. Inside, her producers gathered, urging her to address the confrontation directly on her next broadcast. Ratings had spiked to record numbers, but Kelly felt conflicted. She didn't want to exploit the fight, yet she knew avoiding it would only feed speculation. In the meantime, clips of Keith storming off played on repeat across news channels, fueling a frenzy that showed no signs of slowing. Keith, on the other hand, stayed out of sight. His management team issued a brief statement, claiming he walked off because he refused to let the conversation twist his love for country music into a spectacle. The wording was sharp enough to stir further debate, and fans immediately dissected every phase online. Some applauded Keith for taking a stand, saying Kelly had pushed too hard with her questions, while others argued that walking away showed weakness rather than strength. Within hours, the #StandWithKeith clashed against #Kelly was right, creating a digital battleground where thousands of comments poured in every minute. That afternoon, Kelly finally spoke on her own show, opening with a calm but candid monologue. Her voice carried both sadness and determination as she admitted she never expected such a clash with someone she admired deeply. She stressed that her questions came from a place of love for country music, not disrespect. "I don't think progress erases tradition," she said firmly, earning thunderous applause from her live audience. The clip spread quickly online, praised by fans and celebrities alike, including several country stars who posted their support for Kelly's honesty. But as her words gained traction, Keith's silence began to feel louder. Behind closed doors in Nashville, the industry buzzed. Some artists felt Keith's reaction had been justified, while others privately admitted it was a mistake that could tarnish his reputation. Whispers of loyalty lines being drawn filled the air. Who would side with Keith, and who would back Kelly? Even producers and executives began speculating about future collaborations, worried the fallout could fracture partnerships. Meanwhile, tabloids ran with stories of a country music civil war, exaggerating tensions but feeding the public's insatiable appetite for drama. Fans who once celebrated both artists now found themselves forced to choose a side in a feud that had spiraled beyond control. As the days stretched on, the feud refused to fade. Keith finally broke his silence with a longer post, filmed in his studio, where he spoke directly to fans. His tone was measured but unwavering. He explained that he left Kelly's show because he wouldn't compromise his beliefs, but he emphasized that he still respected Kelly as an artist and a person. The video sparked a fresh wave of debate, but it also softened some of the hostility, as fans sensed genuine emotion in his words. Kelly, responding hours later in a radio interview, echoed his sentiment, saying she respected Keith but also believed that disagreement was part of what kept music alive. Still, the memory of his walkout lingered like a scar, a reminder that even friendships forged in music could fracture under the heat of live television.